The sand stretched endlessly beneath twin crimson suns, each grain a monument to a dying world. In the hollow beneath the ancient stone archive, Elder Vekarus traced his clawed finger across fading glyphs, chronicling his people's history 3,000 years of plenty, followed by 500 years of slow, agonizing drought. "We have 12 cycles left," Council Member Thresh announced, her voice hollow as a dried riverbed. "The deep wells are dust." This was how civilizations ended, not with war or plague, but with the simple, terrible absence of water. Then a sound. Sharp, electronic. Wrong. The emergency beacon flared to life, screaming about atmospheric entry, structural failure, imminent impact. When scouts returned at dawn, they carried something impossible, a bipedal creature, smooth-skinned, desperately fragile. Its lips were cracked and bleeding, one arm twisted at an unnatural angle. "We cannot spare resources on strangers when our own children thirst," Thresh said, the words hanging like an execution order. Vekarus looked at the unconscious creature, thought of the glyphs he'd been reading stories of when his people had been generous, before the drought had shriveled their souls. His hand trembled as he unhooked the flask from his belt and tipped water past the alien's lips. "We were not always this small," he whispered. The human woke slowly, confusion clouding eyes the color of forgotten oceans. "You ... gave me water." Thresh laughed bitterly. "A moment of weakness. Perhaps our last." But the human smiled, and the expression transformed their battered face into something luminous. "Thank you," they said, and the words carried such genuine weight that several council members shifted uncomfortably. For 2 days, the human rested and observed. On the third morning, Vekarus found them drawing in the sand interconnected structures, mathematical notations, fluid dynamics, equations. "My name is Jordan Kane," they said. "I'm a terraforming engineer. My grandparents turned Mars's polar regions viable. My parents seeded atmosphere processors on Titan. I specialize in water reclamation from hostile environments." They gestured at the drawing. "Earth was like this once: the Sahara, the Gobi, the Atacama dead zones. But we learned. Your atmospheric moisture content is decent. The water's there, just not accessible. If you give me materials, I can show you." Vekarus felt something extinct kindling in his chest. "Show us." The human asked for simple things: clay, sand, scrap metal, basic tools. For 3 days, Jordan worked with feverish intensity, shaping clay into curves, calculating angles, positioning reflective surfaces. The aliens watched skeptically as the human constructed what appeared to be an artistic sculpture. On the 4th morning, Jordan activated a small power cell. The structure hummed. Air moved through designed channels. And then, impossible as answered prayer, a single drop of water formed at the base collector. Then another. Then a steady trickle. The younger aliens didn't recognize the sound of falling water. "It's pulling water vapor from the air," Jordan explained. "Differential cooling, condensation points, gravity collection. This prototype produces maybe 2 liters per day. But scaled up, we could process thousands of liters." Vekarus dropped to his knees beside the condenser, watching water bead and fall with sacred reverence. Thresh touched the moisture to her lips. She said nothing, but her eyes spoke volumes. Within a day, every able-bodied alien volunteered for construction. Jordan designed larger structures, training work crews in precise measurements and careful balance. Despite their broken arm and exhaustion, Jordan moved through the site with relentless energy. By the end of the first week, 3 full-sized condensation towers stood, producing 50 liters daily. Children, who'd never known anything but rationed water, learned to fill cups without measuring. Elders wept openly. On the 15th day, Jordan collapsed mid-instruction. The aliens carried them to the medical bay with startling gentleness, realizing the human had become essential to their survival. When Jordan woke 3 days later, they found Thresh sitting beside the cot. "You nearly died for us. For strangers." Jordan managed a weak smile. "You gave me water when you had none to spare. I'm just returning the favor." Thresh's voice cracked. "We are not worthy of humans." But Jordan shook their head. "You were always worthy. You just forgot." By the 30th day, a small lake had formed, fed by condensers, now dotting the landscape. For the first time in 500 years, the aliens planted crops. Children played at the water's edge, splashing and laughing. Jordan taught maintenance, redundancy systems, expansion techniques to anyone who would listen. "Knowledge is like water," they explained. "Most valuable when it flows freely." Then the others came. Tribes from the Deadlands, nomads from the eastern wastes, hundreds of aliens, possibly thousands, armed and starving, drawn by rumors of flowing water. They'll take everything, Thresh argued. We must defend the condensers. Prepare for war. Jordan stood before the assembly. Or we teach them. The chamber erupted in protest. Jordan waited for silence, then continued with gentle insistence. Scarcity creates conflict, but abundance creates community. I can show them how to build their own condensers. We can transform this entire region. Vecrus studied the human's face, seeing conviction and fundamental optimism his people had lost. You would arm potential enemies with the tools of survival. Jordan met his gaze steadily. I would give thirsty people water. Everything else follows from that choice. The Great Council gathered representatives from 47 groups, crowding the ancient amphitheater, with generations of distrust simmering. Before Vecrus could speak, Northern tribe warriors rushed the stage, weapons drawn, shouting about betrayal. Jordan stepped forward, unarmed, and positioned themselves between attackers and the condensation towers. You want water? Take it. Destroy me. Take what you need. But you'll have water for maybe a month. Then you'll be exactly where you started, dying slowly. They gestured to the towers. Or I can teach you. Everyone, you can take, or you can learn. Choose. The Northern War Chief Crotha lowered his blade slowly. Why would you help us? We are nothing to you. Jordan smiled. Because I was dying in the sand, and strangers gave me water. Because my species almost destroyed itself fighting over resources before we learned cooperation. Because life is precious, and I have the knowledge to preserve it. What kind of person would I be if I hoarded that? The amphitheater fell silent. Then Crotha drove his blade into the sand and knelt. His warriors followed. Within minutes, every alien in the assembly had made the gesture of supplication. But that evening, as thousands gathered for Jordan's teaching session, the sky darkened with terrifying speed. Storm clouds impossible, unrecorded for half a millennium, boiled up from the western horizon. Northern extremists, convinced the storm was punishment, rushed the towers with torches and explosives. Jordan ran toward the towers, not away. Vecrus and his warriors followed, as did Crotha and the northern tribes. They met at the base of the largest tower in desperate struggle. Jordan climbed the maintenance ladder one-handed, trying to reach emergency shutdown protocols. Lightning began to strike, first distant, then immediate. One of the saboteurs grabbed Jordan's injured arm. The human cried out, but held firm. Then the storm broke fully. Rain, actual rain, wild weather unleashed after centuries of drought, poured from the sky in sheets. Lightning struck the tower's metal components, and Jordan became a conduit. The electrical discharge should have killed them. Instead, impossibly, it powered the condensers beyond designed capacity. Water erupted from collection points, flooded channels, overwhelmed drainage systems. The aliens stopped fighting and simply stood in the downpour with upturned faces, feeling wetness they'd only read about. Jordan descended slowly, clothes smoking, somehow still alive. They stood at the tower's base with arms spread wide and laughed pure, uncomplicated joy. The sound cut through thunder and rain. Infectious. Around them, thousands of aliens danced, wept, drank rain straight from the sky. Rivers carved themselves into existence. Dry valleys filled with rushing torrents. Seeds that had waited centuries split open and began to grow. Jordan turned to Vecrus and said simply, "Water finds a way. Life finds a way. We just have to give it a chance." Even the saboteurs stood transfixed, watching the world remember how to be alive. The storm lasted 3 days. When it cleared, green shoots pushed through moistened soil. Dry riverbeds ran with actual rivers. Jordan spent those days teaching anyone who would listen, driven by the belief that things could be better if enough people worked toward it. Children discovered swimming through trial and joyful error. Crops pushed toward the suns with aggressive vitality. Alien engineers began constructing additional condensers across territories that had been written off as dead. Within 2 months, the desert began to retreat. Within 4, the first harvest in 500 years filled empty storage facilities. The council met on the 100th day, and this time there was no division, just shared wonder. Vecrus proposed a monument carved from stone cliffs, a human figure holding a flask, water flowing in eternal streams. Jordan protested, but Thresh explained gently, "This monument reminds us we had a choice. We could have let you die. We could have hoarded water. We could have fought at each crossroads. We chose differently, because you showed us how." The inscription read simply, "They gave water to a stranger. The stranger gave us rain." On the 120th day, a human rescue ship descended from orbit. The team found not a dying engineer, but a thriving civilization rapidly transforming desert into arable land. They found Jordan teaching advanced hydrology to 50 young aliens. The captain listened to Vecris's explanation with astonishment. One engineer terraformed an entire planet. Vecris shook his head. No, a human showed us how to save ourselves. There's a difference. More human engineers arrived, specialists in atmospheric processing, agricultural development, ecological restoration. They worked alongside aliens as genuine partners, sharing knowledge, trading techniques. Jordan insisted the aliens remain primary architects of their world's transformation. This is their planet. We're consultants, not saviors. They're saving themselves. The approach became a model for human-alien relations, studied at diplomatic academies. The planet, officially named Vecris's Hope, became a symbol of what was possible when kindness superseded survival instinct. 1 year after the crash, Jordan stood with Vecris at the monument's dedication ceremony, watching thousands gather to celebrate. The planet now boasted 47 major lakes, countless rivers, 3 million hectares of cultivated land. Birth rates climbed. Ancient art forms flourished again. Music filled the settlements. Vecris placed his clawed hand on Jordan's shoulder. When we must make difficult choices, we ask, what would the waterbringer do? Jordan winced, but didn't argue. I'd say you already knew how to be generous. You proved it the moment you gave water to a dying stranger. I just gave you the opportunity to remember who you were. The ceremony concluded with native bird species thought extinct, now breeding in restored wetlands, released into the twilight sky. They wheeled overhead, their calls echoing across water, reflecting the first stars. Years would pass. The desert would continue its retreat. Jordan would eventually return to Earth, an old engineer with stories about the aliens who saved them and whom they'd saved in return. The monument would stand for centuries, water flowing from that carved flask, a reminder that civilizations survive not through hoarding resources, but through sharing them. And in the archive, a simple inscription would be added. A human fell from the sky. We gave them water. They gave us rain. We gave each other hope.